So we're here today with Brandon and AJ, a couple of digital marketing experts, and they're going to talk to us today about ticketing platforms and how ticketing platforms can boost their revenue and improve their site and their marketing. So first off, I'd like to dive in a little bit with Brandon and AJ, and if you guys could each just tell us a little bit about your business and the benefits of what you do and kind of how that works with each other's businesses.
Sounds great. Ladies first.
I was going to say, you should go first, Brandon, since you do the part that leads into what we do.
Okay, perfect. I'd be happy to introduce myself. So my name is Brandon O'Connor. I run a business called Trustworthy Digital. We were started in January of 2018, so been running about 3 years now. Prior to starting Trustworthy Digital, I worked for Ticketmaster and Paciolan for 12 years, both in their e-commerce and digital marketing departments. Our business at Trustworthy Digital, we help businesses find their ideal customers online through digital advertising. So Google ads, Facebook ads, Pinterest, you name it. Basically, wherever your customer spends their time, and we help market your business. And in the case of ticketing platforms, market your events so that you get more fans in attendance and sell more tickets.
Great. And we're on the second half of that equation. So Experiment Zone helps companies figure out how to turn those visitors that you're driving to your site into customers. And so we help an array of companies, ticketing companies, e-commerce companies, anyone with a site with traffic who's looking to get more of that traffic to understanding their offer, moving more easily across the site and improving the customer experience.
Got it. Okay, so can you guys dive into ticketing platforms and from each of your perspectives, the major pain points that you guys usually see with those platforms? Brandon, you want to start?
Sure, be happy to start. I mean, there's a lot that can be discussed in this, but just to keep it short and sweet, I think the number one thing when we work with our customers that we run into when it comes to ticketing platforms is just the fact that if you do work with, whether it's Ticketmaster or Paciolan or any of the other bigger brands out there, Eventbrite, et cetera, you're fairly limited in what you can control typically on the ticketing side of the transaction. So really where we love to help our partners is what can you do on the site that you own, your content site, to really create a great experience, to build momentum so that once the customer is ready and raises their hand and says, hey, I want tickets, that once they get to the ticketing platform, that it's as easy as possible for them to go through that process. So that's everything from how you deep link into the site and how you talk about your different ticket offerings to drive interest in consumers. But I would say that the toughest part to answer your question, Aaron, is probably the lack of ability to customize the experience once they're on the ticketing side. And that is something that we consult with clients on to maximize every opportunity that they have.
Yeah, and for customers that have their own ticketing platform and do have some of that flexibility, I think some of the main things we want to make sure that customers can do quickly on the site and easily on the site is understand what tickets are available. So we definitely don't want to get in their way, putting events that they're not looking for, or just kind of making it difficult for them to find the specific date and location they're looking for. And then we also want to think about those upsells. So if they're there for a specific event and you want to upsell them for a full season, is there some sort of intermediary that you can also offer that gets them thinking and being closer to that larger ticket purchase? And then, the last thing is really just setting expectations. How's it going to work? What's the experience going to be like in the stadium, particularly in this COVID environment? Customers are feeling ready to get out, ready to do things, especially as things start opening up, but they still are going to have some concerns about health and safety.
Yeah, on the topic of COVID, can you guys each dig into that a little bit more and talk about the new pain points that have come up with that?
Sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'll jump in, AJ. I just want to echo what you said. I think in the post-COVID world, from a operational standpoint or from a web design standpoint, I think there's new challenges, right? Which is really clearly communicating, I believe, to the end consumer that their safety is of utmost importance, right? And making sure that people feel comfortable attending those events. I think AJ hit the nail on the head that I think many of us, especially those of us who have attended live events in the past and know what that experience is like, we are anxious to get back into that experience again. But I do think from the consumer standpoint, they need to be reassured again that as a business, running the event, that you're going to take good care of their health. That means social distancing, mask policies, things like that, potentially vaccination policies, things that are going to make people comfortable, again, attending those events. And then I think also, just to add on to that, would be what is your business doing in regards to cancellation policies? I know that consumers are concerned. We saw what happened when COVID first got started and kind of some of the scandals around Ticketmaster and some of the other ticketing companies that weren't refunding patrons when those events got canceled. And that can cause people obviously to be shy of purchasing tickets if they don't know that they're protected. So whether that's an internal policy regarding refunds where maybe you choose to offer those refunds in the event of a cancellation, or if you don't and you can't, making sure that you're offering things like ticket insurance so that consumers know that they're protected in the event of, again, an event being canceled for whatever reason.
And I see a lot of companies making a COVID dedicated page, which is great because if people are Googling it and like specifically looking for that information, they can find it more easily. But what I think the biggest gap is integrating that content and that reassurance across the whole funnel. Mm-hmm. So you want to reassure them that tickets are available, what the experience is going to be like. One of the behaviors that is most common in stopping us from taking action is uncertainty. And so just like really setting clear expectations along the way, just like Brandon laid out, what's it going to be like when I get there? How's it going to be different from the last time I went to an event like this? And in the worst case scenario, what's going to happen if I have to cancel? And you want to distill it down so that you can repeat that message and reassure the customer from homepage and landing page through the purchasing process, even to the email confirmation and follow-ups afterward.
Gotcha. So that's really what we're talking about at a customer level, but taking it back to the business level and what you guys each do and kind of these friction points that you guys are talking about. Can you expand on how that really impacts the bottom line and why these matter to these businesses? Like, why should they care?
Yeah, AJ, do you want to take that one? That's more of a conversion rate, I think, thing than a digital marketing standpoint.
Yeah, we do a lot of, so what we do is we take these ideas, like we've got to have the right messaging and have it in the right place. And we create specific hypotheses that then we will A/B test on websites. So we can really understand and measure the experience of having it versus not having it. So we can concretely say, by adding this message and this reassurance, we saw a 22% lift in purchases. So by really thoughtfully measuring it, we can learn more about how customers respond. We might learn what message is effective, but then we might find out the position we had it wasn't right. So we need to keep iterating on that. So on bottom line, very, very small things can have huge impact to customer behavior. Very big things might end up just not making a change at all. And so we really need to make sure we measure it so we understand when we're moving in the right direction so we can double down and apply those learnings elsewhere.
And Brandon, from your side of the business, you're also data focused. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. When we sit down with our partners and we kind of look at their funnel, like AJ mentioned, and, inside Google Analytics or whatever analytics platform they have or heat mapping software, and we see what's happening, where are people falling out of this funnel? Why aren't they buying for whatever reason? And I think to AJ's point on testing, these small changes really can make a big difference. And I explained to many of my customers, in ticketing, say the average conversion rate tends to be 2 to 3% on any given site for any given program. So you're talking, only 2 out of every 100 people that visit will purchase. Well, if you can make a small change on the site, like a COVID policy, or making just the process easier on the end consumer, deep linking them, like we talked about earlier, maybe directly into a package or directly into the price point that they were interested in, and remove some of those extra clicks that are unnecessary. If you can even improve your conversion rate, in that case, say you average 2% and you raise it 1%, and now you're 3%, that's a dramatic increase in revenue for the business. And that's not even counting some of the things that AJ mentioned as far as like upselling. So once you start combining small conversion rate increases with then average order value increases, the growth in the business can just absolutely skyrocket. So I think it's important not to, not test some of these smaller changes just because you think they're small, because at the end of the day, they can really make a big difference in your business growth.
Along that same line, I think some smaller businesses that don't have the same resources want to be able to dig into that data themselves, right? So do you guys have any advice to those businesses of how they can start collecting that data on their own?
Honestly, one of the best things to do is to be talking to your end customer. This is like one of the easiest access points is to intercept someone on your site and to get to set up time with them, offer them some small compensation for that time. And by talking to people, you get a much deeper sense of what's their motivation, why are they there, what are some of their pain points with the experience. So you can take a site from like a 2 or a 3 to like a 4 or 5 just by talking to people, finding the biggest issues and addressing those. And then once you start seeing those conversions come in, that's going to be when you can start refining it more specifically with these smaller changes and with other measurements.
Yeah, 100% agree. Just to give like a real world example of this. So University of Southern California is a client of ours. And last year they were working on a redesign of their website. And so one of the first things that we said, they already had some of these tools in place as far as like Google Analytics to actually start to collect and coalesce this data. But we recommended the exact same thing AJ had mentioned. We said, we should be surveying current visitors of the platform, of the website, and asking them on like a page exit survey, and limiting this, right? We don't want to exit survey everyone, but we did, I think 5% of the people that visited got this exit survey, and just start collecting data. And it was so helpful to our process of working on redesigning that site, because we were able to get direct feedback from the customer as far as what would you like to see more of? What would you like to see less of? Where was there any potential friction in you being able to find the information that you came to visit the site for? And then we were able to take that information, and it's really made a huge improvement for the client as far as key metrics like time on site and pages per visit and conversion rates. And it really goes all the way from upper funnel to almost a snowball effect down funnel when you really focus on the customer and what their pain points are and how you can make it a better experience.
And I think there's more to be said on that too. I think a lot of businesses, especially with smaller teams, don't have the time or maybe the expertise to look at the analytics and to really make sense of it. And so that's why it's really great to really be thoughtful about getting that baseline understanding of what's even happening today. We've talked to potential customers and they don't always know what their conversion rates are or how much traffic they're getting, and just these very fundamental things. And then you can mature beyond that to things like, well, what is your average order value? How does that compare on desktop versus mobile? And so starting to dig into the data and asking very fundamental questions on a regular basis will also give you a sense of, are you progressing in the direction you expect, or are you finding things that might be breaking down and need to be addressed more quickly?
And I want to go back to a second to the customer interactions and asking your customer. Can you guys get a little advice on what those fundamental questions can be? Because I think that can be a little overwhelming as well.
I think to the exit intent survey that Brandon mentioned, I think it's really helpful just to ask, like, why were you here today? And were you able to achieve that? Why or why not? So just as a survey question, very simply getting a sense for that basic behavior. And then you can get really detailed when you have a conversation with someone. So you might want to learn more about them as a person. Is there a problem that they're trying to solve, or is there a goal that they're trying to achieve? So in the case of ticketing, I have an event I have some friends coming in town, and I want to be able to find an event that we'll all like. Well, the set of needs for that customer is going to be very different than someone who lives in town, is already a fan of a specific sport team. So if you start to interview people that represent different personas or different groups of your customers, you're going to be able to understand, oh, our customer journey or our website really falls short in this specific use case.
Yep. I think, again, AJ hit it nail on the head again. It's kind of fun. You're like teeing me up on these. But this is fantastic. Everything you said is, again, kind of what we did with the USC example I just mentioned. We tried to keep the exit survey fairly light on questions for a number of reasons, but one of which is, respecting your customer's time, right? I know I get how many surveys every day from things that I do, and I don't fill out many of them because, I'll open it up and it's like a 30-minute survey, and everyone's time is valuable, right? So I think you want to be careful kind of with how you structure things. And so I think exactly what AJ said, just a couple quick questions, what did you come here for? What were you looking for? Were you able to find it? Did you have a good experience? If not, why? And then maybe a quick, what could we do to make your experience better? I think is really great. And that'll lead a lot of conversations. And then also to AJ's point, which I thought was another really great thing to call out, is who is that customer? And in ticketing, AJ is totally right on this. You have your season ticket holders, diehard fans, maybe they've owned tickets for 30 years. They're going to have a totally different need than someone who's visiting for the first time, to AJ's point, who maybe has friends in town. They want to do something fun and they're thinking of an event. And maybe in this case, they thought of a USC football game. From the company standpoint, or if you're USC, you want to have your process of content on the site make sense for that customer. So that means that you may have to, on your landing pages, explain things a little bit different so that the new person who's never attended a live event can understand why it's so great to come to a live event. Because if I've never been before, even if I'm a USC fan, but I always stay home and order pizza and get some cheap beer and invite my friends over so that, I have an inexpensive entertainment option. Why should I deal with traffic and have to drive an hour into town and have to wait an hour to get out of the parking lot after the game? What about that experience makes it worthwhile for me to invest the time and money to attend that event? And I think this is where most ticketing companies, or event organizers, have the biggest opportunity on their websites. Is you have to explain what the experience is like. Video is huge on this, and talking to, and a lot of photography, right? Talking to what that experience is like. And it's all about that memory making that you can't necessarily do on your couch. And so I think, as more companies really focus on talking about that experience, I think what we'll see is the customer persona that AJ just mentioned, someone who's maybe never attended a live event before, they're going to start converting more of those customers, and they're actually going to create more rabid fans and more season ticket holders, and really create a much healthier future for their business by making sure that they don't leave, again, that type of communication out. So landing page experience, really important on that.
Yeah,
diving into that a little. Oh, go ahead, AJ.
I was going to build on the exit intent questions, because I think, to Brandon's point, when you're asking customers for information, if you're not giving them something in return, like, you've got to be really light on how many questions. Mm-hmm. And what I've been seeing trending is this idea of, like, you have a chance to win a $25 gift card, and then they have you spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes filling something out. And that really devalues the relationship. Whereas you could give them a 20% off coupon in your store. And so then they're going to come back, or, buy one ticket, get one free on your site. Like, there's different ways that you could reward that information you're getting from them and that time that they're offering. And so as you think about who you're talking to and spending time with customers, you can ask for more information, but you have to give more in order to get that, and for it to feel like a rewarding experience for the person giving you the information.
Sure. Right. That makes a lot of sense. And going to kind of the place that Brandon was going, with a solution-based mindset, we're talking about collecting the data and looking at the data, but then can you guys talk a little bit more about typical strategies to get the solutions once you have the data, right? Like, what do you do with the data once you have it?
Are you asking, like, what specific solutions, like, will be helpful to customers?
Yeah, for ticketing industries, yeah, and kind of the strategy that you guys there, once you have the strategy you use once you have the data. And like Brandon's talking about, kind of thinking about the different visitors that you have and breaking the data down that way, things along those lines.
Yeah, and I think when we start to think about these customer personas and bringing them to life, like the example of I'm hosting a bunch of people in town and I don't even know, like maybe they're interested in comedy or maybe they're interested in sports, but I don't really have a more specific area than that. We can set a really broad goal of trying to make it life easier for that person, help them find the right ticket. And there's probably 120 ways that we could potentially solve that on our site. And so in terms of like, we can test an iteration of it. Are more people, adding that ticket to cart or finding that particular ticket? But then we don't want to stop there, because if we're seeing that certain things are getting traction, certain things people aren't responding to, we've got to keep going and keep iterating so that that person ultimately has a really smooth experience.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think, kind of going back to data collection, and then I think this next piece, and I had already kind of rabbit trailed a little bit over here, my previous response just talking about landing pages, but I think, making sure, which we talked about earlier, that you have the ability to collect that data is so important, even if you don't understand how to review it, because then in the future, if you ever look to work with a partner or you hire staff to come in that's experienced in this area, you don't want to have to start from ground zero. So I would say, the basics of get Google Analytics on your site, super easy. It's free to add. That's a necessity in my opinion. And then as a second piece, add, and we're recommending now Microsoft Clarity, which is a heat map and user recording tool, also completely free, unlimited. So similar to, if you've heard of Hotjar before, but again, there's no cost. And so no matter how much web traffic you get, you can track every visitor and what they're doing. And then at least, again, you're coalescing that data. And then I think at that point, once you have that data and you understand, here's my goal, here's what I want to look for, I want to reduce friction. Then I think, like AJ said, it's kind of breaking it down by persona and identifying based on your landing pages, again, where are people abandoning during the process? Are they all leaving on the content site? Are they getting to the ticketing platform and then they're leaving on the, say, map where they select their seats? How do we identify, again, where that friction is? And then it's working on developing tests based on that will help solve that problem. So if we see, again, a lot of people are abandoning on the info page, they're not scrolling past the first couple sentences, well, that's a good indication that copy needs to be reworked, right? Or creative imagery needs to be added, things that are going to get people more excited about potentially attending that event so that they can actually get to the shopping cart process. And then you rinse and repeat, right? Then you start from the shopping cart process. Well, what can I do now that I've removed friction from landing page to cart? How do I remove friction from cart to checkout, or then checkout to purchase? And I think it's constantly iterating through those steps, which is going to show a lot of incremental growth over time.
Yeah, and I think when you brought up the click tracking, I think one of the best places to start with that, because I hear a lot of companies install these, and then it's great to be collecting that data, but you want it to be meaningful. So one of the places I do recommend is running it on and checking the data on landing pages. So seeing, like, testing your assumptions. Are people scrolling as far down the page as you think they are? Are they getting to those key calls to action? And then are they actually interacting with it? Because sometimes we're surprised, or people will look at a page and then the things that customers actually do on it are so different than the way that maybe the page was intended to perform. And so you can identify, okay, this is the actual call to action, but it's tucked over here. Most of the actions are on the right side of the page. So maybe we need to move this over. So you can start developing really simple changes and really simple hypotheses just by looking at landing page click behavior. Where I would caution people is that sometimes it's really interesting to watch every individual person click through your site, but it can be a huge, huge time suck. And so unless you have a specific hypothesis, like we're seeing huge drop-offs at the cart step, why is this happening? Maybe you can focus in on watching a couple of those cart videos, but I certainly wouldn't recommend just sitting and watching it all day, because you're not going to understand why the customer is doing what they're doing. And in aggregate, you're going to get better information.
Yeah, I think those pieces of advice of making small changes and looking for friction just makes it a lot less overwhelming, right? So, okay, so last big question here. what kind of return can these businesses expect from all these marketing activities? You know, there's like all these different things that you can do for your site. And I think a lot of companies want to know that it's worth it and they're actually going to see money back from it. So you guys each speak to that. AJ, go ahead.
Yeah, and our customers across the board see at least 10x ROI on the investment they're making with us, but we far exceed that actually with many of our customers. And the promise that we make is that we're going to help you understand not only how to improve your conversion rate, but also increase your understanding of your customer. And so not only is there a measurable impact from the testing that shows that return on investment, but we're going to help you level up the understanding of who are those personas, what are their struggles, and help prioritize with that. And so what we often actually hear is the biggest benefit of working with us is, wow, we really have the roadmap ahead. So we don't feel like we have to tackle every single possible thing. We don't have to test everything we've ever considered testing, but instead we're going to focus on the things that are going to have the biggest impact first.
That's great. And just to add on to that, so we as a digital marketing agency that's finding the traffic and sending the traffic, we love working with companies like Experiment Zone, right? Because at the end of the day, I can drive the most qualified traffic possible for a business that I'm working with. But if the experience for the consumer is poor, they're going to lose a lot of those people, right? We already said potentially 98 out of 100 people will come, but they're not going to purchase. And so to answer your question, Aaron, we typically see on the very low side a 4 times return from digital advertising, depending on the channel, as high as we've done 20 times return. I mean, and it really depends on exactly what we talked about, the experience. It's not just how well are we defining who your potential customer is and what type of creative and copy are we using from an advertising perspective to get them interested in learning more about your events. But again, it's about that whole experience once they visit the website. And so I think, the digital marketing and CRO combined together is where you really see your results compound and you just improve your returns across both of those investments. So the best of both worlds is the way to go, I think. But yeah, I'd say 4 to, again, potentially up to a 20 to 1 return, just depending on how much lead time and what type of budget and what channels, there's a lot of variables there.
And it's really great for us to work with digital marketing teams like Trustworthy Digital too, because not only are they data driven like we are and thinking about the data critically and asking these thoughtful questions, but they're sending quality traffic to the site, which helps us because we have people that are they have higher intent when they come to the site, so we can help guide them through the customer journey. And it's just really great to work with a partner also who, we're learning things on the site, they're learning things off-site and on-site, and all these things can add up to an understanding of what messages work for customers, what creative works for customers. And there's a lot of cross learnings across channels, whether it's on your site or off your site.
And a better experience for the business too, right? Because they are seeing that holistic strategy and getting that huge ROI win, which I think we can all get behind. All right, well, we have one question from the audience, and if anyone else has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get them answered for you. So a question, how can you leverage your personal brand online to bring in more clients? And whoever wants to take it first.
I have a simple answer because I think one of the things that we often see as a miss on landing pages is just forgetting to say it plainly. So in terms of your personal brand or the business brand, what you want to do is give that first impression is really, really important. And so you want to make sure you've got a short, clear, concise message that somebody can see above the fold, which means without scrolling, so they can land on your site and they know immediately what it's about. So you want it to say what it is that this website's for and why you want to go with this website. And so for ticketing companies, this is where we would start talking about the differentiators, right? What's the experience like? What are your COVID safety protocols? And so you even want to include a lot of that information early on so people can start getting a sense of, I want to stick around and learn more about this.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Again, just to echo that statement, I think, I think almost everyone has probably heard the goldfish attention span, whatever study that's been out there that basically says because of the high-tech world that we live in today and constantly being barraged with information, our attention span is like 3 seconds. So you need, to AJ's point, get that message across right away because someone's not going to spend 5 minutes on your website learning about who you are or why it's important to them. They're going to take that first 3 seconds. You need to capture attention with a great headline and then have some leading information after that, to AJ's point, that kind of describes things a little bit further and who you serve and how you serve them. And I think if you do that really effectively, you're going to see really great growth. But if you don't, you'll probably be in the situation, like I mentioned, where you're just you can drive traffic, you can drive interest, but they'll never follow through to end up being a customer because it's not clear enough for them.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I'd add to what Brandon's saying there is we often will write about ourselves, our business, our ideas, our product, and the customer doesn't care about that yet. They first care about why they're there. So I want to have fun with my friends this weekend. I need tickets, right? So let me know that I can achieve that goal on that site. And so, in terms of personal branding, I often see there's this about section that's this huge resume with all this information, paragraphs of rating. People don't have time. It's a competitive market. They have a lot of options online. So you've got to differentiate by being concise and clear, and then reiterating that message, whether it's in your advertising, in your social media, and across your website.
Again, just making it easy and simple for them.
100%.
All right. Well, that is everything that we have today. I do want to highlight a couple of free offers that Brandon and AJ are offering right now. So we have a free conversion report card from Experiment Zone. That's just 3 free recommendations that are custom to your site. And then from Trustworthy Digital, Brandon is giving away a free mini audit with him. So some free time for him to go through your marketing strategy with you. And with that, we'll close it out. Thank you everyone for joining. And don't forget to visit us at experimentzone.com and trustworthydigital.com.